I'd like to welcome everyone to today's show of Truth. Today's guests, we have Chris HOYER with us, his book, When That Day Comes, Training for the Fight. And our special guest, finally today, we have Natalie June Riley, who actually edited the book. It's Chris's girlfriend, and she actually has her own book coming out, The Love Notebook, we're going to be talking about here as well. So, Natalie has a large part into the writing of Chris's book, and Chris throughout his career, writing it down in his words, his perception and things like that, Natalie was able to masterfully, edit the book to where to where it really is a read along, write along. It really is. So it puts it in perspective to where, the civilian sector can understand, what officers go through, as well as cadets first going in, individuals making their decisions to actually join the force, what you face throughout, scrutiny you may face, amongst fellow brothers and sisters, administration, and everything else alike, and things like that as well, too. So it was kind of nice to have, Natalie kind of critique everything to where it puts it in layman's terms for, civilian sector, you and I, and everybody else watching as well, too, while keeping the meat and potatoes to where all law enforcement and first responders can actually relate to everything going on. So without further ado, welcome, Natalie. Welcome, Chris. Finally, Natalie.
Thank you. Well, you guys had to give me some time. You can't just expect a woman to pop in, fix yourself up a little bit.
You're the finger snapper, not us, huh?
Right?
Oh, yes.
And then so Natalie, real quick. So when Chris first gave you the manuscript and you read through it, how did that, with you knowing Chris on the personal side and, reading some of the intensity that he went through, how much did that kind of just was it a shock value to you as well? Or how did that throw you back?
Honestly, I got to know him and the book about the same time. Like the day he gave it to me was really the first conversation we really had. So we were in an airport. We were doing some police scenarios, some training, helping out. We were role players. And he sent it to me email. And so during lunch, when we had lunch break, I opened it up, and honestly, I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And I knew as soon as I started reading it, it was special and that it would have to be published. It was just so well written, and it just engaged me so much. And I told him after lunch, I said, we really need to sit down and talk about this, because this is special. I knew right away.
Amazing. And it's what I love about it is the beginning to the end part. It's the jitters first going in, what every cadet faces going in, and that's why I love today's chapter too. But, it's it makes that real life, and especially in today's culture, us having to smash the stigma, Chris touches base on, he lets a lot of his emotion into it as well too. There's a lot of fun in it, and there's a lot of reality, and that's really what really strikes at home, is the fact that everybody that goes out there every day, should be able to.
Of course, when I started editing, you have to cut and paste and put it together so that it really engages the reader, and that was really difficult for me as someone who's never been in law enforcement. The only connection to law enforcement I had was my son, my oldest, Billy, who was at the time working in Georgia for a small agency. So I'm reading this as a mother, and so it was really difficult. Some of the stories that I heard didn't really want to know. But I think, like I said, it's an important story, and just trying to get the story lined up so that it engages the reader and kind of takes them through the journey from beginning to end was, it took us a while. It took almost a couple of years to get it, or a full year for sure, to get it done. But I'm so proud of it. I think it's one of the most important projects I've ever worked on. And I'm so happy that I was able to do that. I'm so happy that we were put together for that.
And I and so many others are as well, I'm sure. Because.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish up.
I was just going to say, knowing Chris, because I know him well now, and I look back at those stories and I can't even believe that that's the same guy, because the Chris I know is this laid back beach guy, just got a good soul. He's got good vibes. And then you read about all these, scrapes he was in, and it's just hard for me to imagine that.
Well, I mean, and that's why this book is so important, not only to individuals thinking about joining law enforcement, the cadets that are, just first going in, even the veterans, but it's the family of, because like you just said, Natalie, with, you having a child that is in this career, them actually having the shock value is so important, because a lot of people, they see it as whatever's portrayed somewhere.
Yeah.
But if they don't have the realities of what goes on within there, and a lot of, just like you just said about, Chris is this, beach guy, laid back guy. Do you know how many brothers and sisters are that same way, but they are carrying so much,
Oh,
so much, so
and
much
that
weight internally.
I
And
yeah, I just got goosebumps because, like, my son, I've seen a change in him. From He's only been doing this for a handful of years, and I've seen a change in his demeanor, his temperament, everything. That sort of scares me. But seeing Chris on this side, having gone through a 20-year career, 3 shootings and 1 gunfight that where they lost a fellow officer, and then 16 officers who died in the line of duty while he was working, and to see him make it through that, where he is actually that laid back beach guy. He's got a good sense of himself and his world. There is a way to come out of it on the other side. And that's why I think this book is important. That's why I think, having these conversations like we're having now is important, because, like I said, I've seen what it does at a very, my 30-year-old son to Chris, retired. You can come out of this well. So.
well, at least Chris has a belt loop he can hold on to. I like that patch on them jeans, by the way. That's pretty.
Oh, thank you.
That was ingenuitive right there. That was good stuff.
Yeah, it's not a belt; it's more like a choker. Just so you guys know, but, whatever. Hey, I want to say thanks to both of you guys, because I kind of feel like I don't even need to be here because you're covering it all for me. But everything you guys are talking about is absolutely true, and make no mistake about it. I mean, I struggled a lot, especially after Dave was killed. Lost pretty much two years of my life over that whole thing, and but now that I've sought the help that I needed, I got back in shape. Now I'm living the best life ever. It's just awesome, man. And
that's amazing.
now
Let me ask you a question.
Anymore, so it's awesome. So go ahead.
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Absolutely, it is. Hell yeah.
Do you know how many times I've seen Die Hard? I'm about 45 years old. I've seen Die Hard probably over 20 times.
Oh, yeah. At least.
Since it came out in the 80s, but for the now knowing you, reading your book, I never paid attention to when Hal was actually on the CB and he's talking to John McClane, and he tells him that because he's talking about that one where he shot that guy.
Right. Yeah.
And it was a kid, because he thought the kid, it was a real gun. And he said, that's one of the things that they never train us for, is living with our mistakes. And I never paid attention to that part of that movie. And it impacted me a lot. It's a little part of that movie. But when, Bruce Willis is talking to Hal, and, Hal's like, because he was asking him if he was flat footed.
Right.
And he was asking, like, why are you working the desk job? I figured it was because you were flat footed. He said, well, no, I had this incident to where I seen a kid. I thought the gun was real. I shot him.
Yeah.
I said, that he's like, but that's one of the things that they never trained us for, in the academy or anything else like that, is living with our mistakes. And your book and you and everything else is the first thing that I thought of, because it's such a small part of that movie that it's overlooked. But even back in the 80s, it's one of the things that, officers live with this every day. All first responders live with this every day, to where it's like they never train you for that. That's why this book is so vital. That's why it's so vital for family of first responders to actually understand what really goes on, for the cadets to understand what they're really signing up for. It all looks good in black and white. And when they can cut and edit everything on TV before you actually see it. It all looks good, but hey, who's actually signing up for the the shit magnet?
Yeah, right. Well, I'll tell you, man, take that a step further. There's, without trying to scare people, there's things that you're going to see and that you're going to go through. But I don't want people to get freaked out and think, oh my God, it's all this really bad stuff, because that's a small percentage of it. Yeah, it does happen. You're going to see a lot of bad things. Like obviously in my case, Nat already mentioned it, buried 16 of my buddies, 3 since I retired. And now we've got, Tyler fighting for his life. So that's 20 in now 23 years since I've been in the law enforcement community. But to say that I would do it all over again, absolutely all day long, because it's a calling. It truly is. And also it's a big cliche. And I tell my guys all the time, even for what I'm doing now, that you guys are honored to be sitting in that seat where you are, because so many people either can't or won't do it. And there are even fewer people. I wrote about this in one of my last stories, that even us, we don't really even understand why the hell we do it, because who gets paid to get shot at? Right? So, but outside of all that, I had a blast. I had an absolute ball, out there chasing bad guys, and even just, meeting up with the community and talking to people and meeting all these different people. And, it's just absolutely a ride from, it's like your e-ticket ride all the way across the board, man. It was awesome. So.
Through your career, how many smiles do you think that you got to see because of your actions?
Well, to be honest with you, I know this is it's going a little bit off track, but and I know Natalie has a hard time, coming to terms with it, and a lot of my friends that know me really well are the same way. But I was pretty much the same guy on the street that I am right now. It was only that situation, you hear a lot of, and I'm not comparing myself to the SEAL community by any stretch, but you hear a lot of SEAL guys talk about the same thing. They're super mellow until they got to turn it on. You turn it on for that few minutes, whatever it is, and you turn it right back off. And so with that, I had a lot of really good feedback, even from my bad guys, and I tell this, I'm teaching a use of force class a couple of days ago, and I tell them, as long as the handcuffs are off and you guys are within policy and not excessive, the rules are out the window. There are no rules for us at that point in time. And more often than not, what happens with me was, I knew, we talked about this a lot before, where, mentally, I know that I can't lose a fight. If I lose that fight, I could die, or somebody else could die. So I had that mindset. But as soon as I win that fight, I'm dusting them off, and I'm apologizing for having, knocked their teeth out or whatever else it was. And, clearly sometimes they get pissed off, whatever else. But it was very, very common for me to say, what, well, here's a Coke, here's a Snickers bar, let's just freaking kind of part friends, so to speak. Even though you're going to jail, I'm going home. And believe it or not, a lot of bad guys took that on board. They're like, yeah, you freaking asshole cop, I hate you for doing what you did. But it was never a lack of respect, if that makes any sense. So a really long roundabout answer to your question. I got a lot more positive feedback than you would think, so which is good.
Well, a lot of times it's a blessing, so a lot of individuals don't see that blessing until later in life. And, a lot of times that ride back to the station, or the ride downtown, or whatever the case is, it does give, officers that opportunity to plant seeds, where, what we just went through didn't have to happen. Your family's now affected by this, everything else. And it's it can change lives. That's just like, people don't look at DUIs as severe as they should be looked at. There's innocent kids, innocent families out there and things like that. So officers that make DUI stops, they're saving lives ultimately. It's little things like that, it's the impact that you do on, like you said, it's a calling. And some individuals say, oh yeah, I like to help people. Okay, well, do this, but it's I don't know if I want to uphold all that now. I'm not going to risk myself for it.
Well, also, you've got discipline where you can say, does this guy need another $1,000 worth of tickets? He's already $5,000 in the hole. Am I really helping him by doing that? Probably not. All he's going to do is be pissed off at the cops, and it's going to prompt this guy not to want to stop for us, or he's going to want to fight us because, we're assholes to this dude.
So that's the problem, man. You've been writing too many tickets, man. You got to hit him with that billy club one time. I bet you'll stop then.
Yeah, pretty much. You want me to stop or do you want me to slow down? We've all heard that joke. We can be empathetic and sympathetic if we need to some of these people, and not everybody needs to get freaking thumped or a ticket or whatever else. Sometimes they just need a freaking shoulder to cry on or whatever else, not getting all sappy, but that's happened too. Let's face it, when the cops show up, it's not because they want to invite us, have beers and barbecues and shit. It's usually because they're having a really bad day. And more often than not, it's because we caused that bad day. So I had all kinds of opportunities to take a step back and go, yeah, I could jam you up 27 different ways, but I'm just not feeling it. I was too. A lot of guys told me I was probably too lenient on some folks before, but when they make that decision, they're going to take you out, shoot at you or whatever else, and then they pause and they're like, well, all right, maybe I don't really want to do that. Does that happen all the time? Probably very rarely, but we have that opportunity. We've got that. That chance to change people's lives for the positive or for the negative. I say go for the positive if you can. Not all the time, of course, because some guys just need it. They need to get their ass kicked, and so be it. And they need tickets and whatever else.
Well, that's an important part of the training as well, though, too, is the mediation. Because a lot of times things don't have to escalate to the point to where they go. Sometimes the bad guy doesn't have to go to jail. If proper mediation is done. A lot, and especially domestic calls, which domestic calls, are the highest out of any kind of call we're going to take, but knowing how to do that proper mediation and to be that in between, almost like a marriage counselor, it's just where you're just having that mediation where it doesn't always have to end up to where bad guys going to jail or things like that. They do need that shoulder to cry on, or just somebody to mediate and listen to both sides. Just say, look, can you guys work this out amongst each other now that we've actually got to the bottom of the things? But there's always I'm not going to say always, but, as long as effort's put forth, I guess, the mediation part is a lot of the job, realistically.
Well, like Chris said, not everybody's a bad guy. They just might be having a bad day, and so you got to be able to determine that, decipher, have that ability to do that.
Exactly. And having someone like you snapping the fingers, kind of helps out as well too. we need to clone you and pass you out.
That's
with the love notes.
There's plenty of us out there.
That's awesome. So how much of, because I know that when you go into the agencies, that the instruction that you're providing, have you been able to do it as a course rather than like an initial giving? Because there's so much that's entailed in just like in this book. In this book only probably encapsulates a small portion of your experience, your knowledge, or just everything that you have to give. But are there main portions that you try to pass on to, whether it be the cadets, the veterans, superiors, or anything else like that?
Yeah, it's an audience by audience kind of a case, if you will. Hope we didn't lose you there, Michael. So there you're screaming.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. I gotta readjust this.
Okay. Yeah, Dan, if I can, I'll answer your question now if you want me to.
I can still hear you.
Okay. Every class that I teach is a little bit different, and I have recently been re-instructed or re-guided to the point of not trying to tell everything that I know, because I want everybody to walk out knowing everything that I know, which of course is literally impossible, So depending on who it is I'm teaching, I try to get as much of the point across as I can for whatever particular topic. Depending on, again, if it's a recruit class, or it's a post-academy class, or if it's a bunch of SWAT guys or whatever it is, I try to focus on their biggest needs or their biggest experiences, if that makes any sense. So it doesn't really come across as a course, and unfortunately sometimes when they see my story and they hear my stuff, more often than not, it's like I was on the floor and a lot of shock value, and a lot of guys don't want any part of it. They don't think it's real. They don't want to be faced with that reality, and a lot of them just. I mean, it's not that I lose the crowd necessarily, but they just kind of shut down because it's too much for them sometimes. But the wonderful part is oftentimes I'll have one or two guys most of the time that'll kind of corner me afterwards and go, "Hey man, what do you think about this or this or this?" And then we have, long conversations. I made just a ton of connections with guys that I still talk to. In fact, Chris Gregorio reached out to me today. He's got a guy that he's going to call me because he got into a critical incident and he's struggling pretty good. So, and I can't wait to get that call. I mean, I really just want to jump in there and try to save this guy if I can, whatever that looks like, So.
Absolutely.
So you're still beeping there,
yeah, it's still. I don't know what's because it just popped up because I had like applications running in the background because I got multiple screens going. So it kicked my camera out.
Oops.
But I'm trying to. It wants me to refresh the screen, but if I do that, I'll lose this whole connection and the live won't be live anymore. So I'm gonna keep toggling with it and reprogram it here real quick while we're doing this right here. But and that's the thing though too, because it's going to be the moment that you soften everything up, that somebody that needs to hear something is going to lose that vital piece of information. That ultimately, because sometimes like going into it for the wrong reasons. A lot of times, hearing your story sets that aside for them. Let them know that, hey, look, I joined because of this. I wanted to drive fast and chase bad guys. But in the same sense, you did want to make sure that, your family, your community, and things like that were safe. But, what that encapsulates is what the missing piece is that so many people need to hear. That, and especially like during our last broadcast about the dog, the things to where we become complacent or something that we're comfortable with, it's like, oh, I can handle this. And that may be that moment that we're just because we're so laid back and lackadaisical because we're complacent and we're so comfortable in the situation, that can be the, that day, when that day comes, literally.
Well, you definitely have to keep you got to keep your armor up. I get it. Trust me when I tell you, man. I mean, there were plenty of days when I just wasn't feeling it and I take a day off or what have you. And it's just it's a statistical destiny for us that at some point in time, you're going to have some kind of a, emotional loss, emotional breakdown, anxiety attack, whatever it is. And one of my former colleagues made a really good point about a guy, and I think it was Louisiana, that saw a dog get hit by a car and called his shrink crying on the sidewalk. And he quickly realized that it had nothing to do with the dog. It was, his 25 years of other stuff that he had seen, and that's where he kind of broke down and lost his cool at that particular time. It's going to happen at some point in time. And if it doesn't, you're either in denial or you haven't really faced anything that you need to face. And this is all my opinion, of course, and this is just something I've learned too that I've figured out for myself. And it's okay to just face those things head on if you need to. If you don't, then at some point in time, it's going to come back on you, whatever that looks like. So, and if it doesn't, and you're able to freaking live a healthy life when you retire and you don't ever have to worry about it again, even better, man. If that happens, let me know how that is because I want to know how to do that. So I can pass it on to the rest of the guys.
I know, right? Because I think we covered that story in the very first broadcast when Chris Gregorio joined us. About that, talking about the some guys can go through their whole career, have gunfights, shoot other, have to put someone down, and it could be seeing a dog get hit by a car that does it for them. It's everybody has their breaking points, and we never know what the next man or woman is actually thinking, going through, what their drive is or what their breaking point is. So we have to know that about ourselves as well too going in, but we also can't go in blindly thinking that it's all sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah. And, it is most of the time. It probably is for most guys and gals too, of course. But
I'm still here. I'm still hearing everything. I'm trying to redo all this different.
Okay. I suddenly got big. I got scared. So, yeah, no, it's a different experience for everybody. Some guys go like me, and they're going to be getting into shit every single day. Other guys go 20 years and never have to pull their gun out of their holster. And it's case by case. I mean, it depends on the agency you're at. I know John, he's in a small agency down there in Southeast. So I don't know what kind of stuff they're going to be getting into down there. And they need to, this is something I think I wrote the story in the last chapter. I'm not sure. Talking about no matter where you are, you still need to be trained and ready for whatever's going to happen. You can go 20 years and never anything happens. And that one time when you need to have all those skills up to speed and in tune, because I mean, like we talked about, I think the last show was, you're going to be performing at 70% if you're lucky. And that's what's pretty consistent training. I like to think that I was about somewhere between 80 and 85% on my scene, and I was trained to the hilt, but I still freaking lost. So
Awesome.
So, Nat, anything to add?
What if you start reading?
Michael, what do you think? Want me to start reading?
Yes, sir. We should be on chapter 8.
Chapter 8, okay. Good call, because obviously I'm starting to ramble now. People are getting sick of that, so sure.
Oh, no, I mean, they're never tired of you. I mean, because it's not like we're just rambling about nonsense. I mean, we're talking about relatable things that affects everybody that's out there right now. I mean, so.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. All right. So am I reading that, or are you going to read it for me?
You read.
All right.
Oh, man. That would be kind of nice to hear the editor read for us, huh?
I was going to say, yeah, come on. It's the first time she's been here. She better do something to earn her keep, damn it.
Because, ultimately, like reading her own words,
That's right. Exactly. Okay, so this is going to be chapter 8, titled Show Me Your Gun. All right. When I graduated academy, I became part of a test case. A couple of the precincts decided to train some of the newbies on first shift as opposed to the normal and much busier second shift. I was totally fine with that. I always believed that a criminal who committed crimes during the day could care less who was watching, and in some small way that made them more dangerous. My original FTO had gone on vacation, which left me with another officer for a spell. Personally, I thought this substitution had more to do with the fact that my original FTO could not take me for more than a few weeks at a time. I was a handful to train, no doubt. My new FTO was anything but new. He was a good guy, crazy as can be, and probably as old as my great-great-great-grandfather's father. He did not take shit from anyone. It didn't matter if you were young, old, a cop, the brass, a chief. He did not care who you were, and everyone knew it. To his credit, he was a wealth of knowledge, and everyone knew that too. My first experience in seeing him in action included a simple shoplifter. By the time we arrived on scene as his backup, he was standing on the subject's neck, a cigarette in his primary hand and his gun in the support hand. I'm pretty sure his exact words to the shoplifter were, "I don't care if you only stole an apple. I'll blow your fucking head into the concrete if you move again." Yeah, I kept myself squared away around him. But he was bad, man. He was crazy. So this early on in my career, I had not quite figured out that I was a magnet for trouble. Looking back, this next call certainly could have been a sign of things to come. It was a garden variety hot call, stolen buckles from a local park. Yawn. No big deal, right? We were close by, and my new trainer, Mr. Take No Shit, who knew next to nothing about me, was certainly curious to see if I knew how to handle myself. Again, I had only been on for a handful of weeks. That's solo ready, right? Anyway, the little thieves were headed right for us. There were 3 of them. I was in the passenger seat. The chase was on. The assumed ringleader of the 3 took off first. The other 2 stopped and almost immediately, giving up with a deer in the headlights look in their eyes. As we drove past, my new FE yelled out the window, "Stay put. Don't move. Don't go home. And don't go to eat. You can think about it, but don't do it." You guys remember, the old movie? You'll remember that one. So, or something to that effect. I had to giggle a little. His demeanor reminded me of Jackie Gleason in Smokey and the Bandit. Wasting no time, we tore off after Homeboy, the bike thief who obviously knew the area well. He pedaled like mad for a quarter mile or so before sneaking into a fenced area that was only big enough for a pedestrian, or in this case, a bicycle. Definitely not a patrol car. Regardless, my trainer hopped the curb, which I found pretty cool. Useless, but cool. "Show him your gun," he demanded as I exited the car. Being a worm shit green, know-nothing booter, even I knew that pulling my gun was useless in this situation for several reasons. First of all, the kid was riding away from me, and it was a bicycle theft, not the crime of the century. Although I was brand new, fresh out of the academy and ready for anything, I decided to pull out opt out of plan A, drawing my weapon. Instead, I kept my gun holstered and gave chase to the kid on the stolen bicycle alone. This chase in my career afforded me many lessons. Lesson 1, criminals are stupid. Gotta love that. If you steal a bicycle from a populated city park and run from the cops on said bicycle, you are stupid. And if when you realize the cops are actually chasing you and you ditch the bike and run on foot, you're really stupid. So the kid ditched the bike and was on foot, running instead of riding. I was hot on his track, smiling because my chances dramatically improved of running him down. Lesson 2, secure your equipment. Being young, I had not quite figured out how to carry my flashlight, and sure enough, I dropped it a short way into the chase. Luckily, I found it later, and despite it hitting the ground and bouncing no less than 10 yards into the street, it came away with only scratches. Small trophies, battle scars for me. Cops carry a lot of tools of the trade, and it takes some time to get used to having them on your body, especially when you're chasing or tussling with bad guys. Fortunately, these days, the equipment made for us is kind of job specific, so it's built as hard wearing as we are. Lesson 3, paying attention to detail, particularly what channel your portable radio is on. I chased this kid for about 4 blocks. When I was clearing for help, I did it on the wrong channel. Oops. That definitely went in my notes. Damn it. This kid did his level best to outrun me, and maybe he would have, except that he tried to double back and ended up running headlong into a patrol car. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the officer made a wrong turn and missed him. It didn't matter because Junior stopped and turned back, running right into my waiting arms. Lesson 4, sometimes a bad guy can lose his bladder. The kid and I struggled for control and as soon as he realized that I had him and it was game over, he wet himself. Come on, man, I'm not that scary. It was not much fun searching the guy after that mess, but oh well. Lesson 5, there's joy in saying those 4 magic words. Along with saving the day, it is a big deal for a rookie to say to somebody he's just apprehended, you are under arrest. It means you did your job, you owned the victory in that moment. By the end of my career, I would hand over that sense of joy to the junior officer because I knew how much it meant. Lesson 6, pay attention to where you are at all times. In this case, I had no clue. It was by the grace of God that I landed in the front yard of a corner house. Despite my clearing on the wrong channel earlier in the chase, I radioed my location. I felt an overwhelming sense of joy in getting backup officers on scene. Hearing the screaming sirens and screeching tires and smelling brakes burning was totally amazing. This all for me. It was a proud moment, even if it was just a stolen bike. In the end, I did what I had to do to win, and I did it without showing my gun. These were baby steps, all in preparation for a long and prosperous career. So that's chapter 8. So lots and lots of lessons learned on that one, of course, as you guys heard. There were so many things that happened on that particular scene. This was, broad daylight. Like I said, I worked in my career mostly in days. And it's really cool to be able to chase dudes down. When you're fresh out of the academy, you can run like the freaking wind, and when you finally go and you tackle some dude and you're like, yeah, I got you. And you put the handcuffs on him and you say those magic words, man. And like the first time ever was like such a huge deal for me. I know nobody really cares about that. I mean, the first time, it's either magical or it's like nobody cares. For me, it was magical, especially because I was by myself and I knew that nobody knew where I was. I was able to secure this guy alone. It was like, yeah, this is probably not the smartest way to do this, but I did it and then, handled the business. So,
what's what you signed up for?
Yeah. I mean, that was a classic. This is what I want to be doing, and I mean, just like I think I told the story already about my first major fight when, all I could think about at the time was I'm actually getting paid for this. I mean, who knew, right? So, I mean, that's just unbelievable. So,
well, one of the things too, in the lessons is that in like the securing your equipment, there's a lot of individuals, going in, a lot of officers going in, their tactical belt and everything else. They just kind of set it up by the book rather than what's comfortable for them. I mean, because, it has to be comfortable for you. It also has to make sense that, if you do go into hand-in-hand in close quarters, that, you're not actually giving the subject the benefit, you know what I mean? The upper hand, rather, but, in dropping certain things, you don't know how many officers I've seen drop their sidearm. That should never happen. Never happen.
Never happen. No.
I've seen. I know an officer personally that we went out to lunch, and he left his sidearm in the stall in the bathroom, you know, and you talk about, I still to this day don't let him live it down. It's great. But anyway.
That's actually pretty common. That's pretty common. When we get to that part of the book, there's a story about that with me too, but I'm not going to talk about it now. I'll probably deny it later anyways, but even though it's in print, but so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're right though, because securing your equipment, I told this to my class a couple days ago. I said, you know, do you know the bad guys that really don't care about carrying weapons? You know why? And they're all looking at me like, well, that's because the cops bring all the weapons to the fights. So if you don't know how to secure your equipment properly, bad guys know that they'll take it away from you. You know, I don't know her name, and forgive me for not knowing, but there was an officer just killed with their own weapon, like screaming for her life, and they freaking executed her. You know, it's like, I don't know what the circumstances were with that, but you know, when it gets to that point, that's one of the worst case scenarios you can even imagine. You know. So it just drives the point home that you need to really, really pay attention to what you have, where it is, how it's secured, and how to access it too. Of course, I mean that's the most important thing, because it can be a life-saving or life-taking kind of situation, you know. So
that, and paying attention to details as well too, because you know the mannerisms of the subject a lot of times is going to give away, because you know a lot of subjects, they're going to seem submissive just to get close quarters with you or any other officer and things like that. And then, you know, the whole time they're kind of, you know, eyeballing and kind of finding out where everything's at, you know, and because they play that tactical aspect as well too sometimes, you know, especially when that fear factor kicks in, like knowing that they're about to go to jail or anything else like that, you know, so they become submissive just to get that close quarters contact with somebody. And it puts a lot of people in jeopardy. You know, and then a hesitation factor. You know, so many officers are not really willing to draw a firearm. You know, they think of other ways, and they play it too long in their head about, hey, what's the best outcome for this scenario? You know, they overplay it. So I use my, should I use my OC spray and my taser? I pull my sidearm, and it's overplayed too much, and then it's your life. You know, I mean.
Well, I'll tell you the stuff that I teach is a lot about posturing with folks, and I teach this now to this day still. I mean, I've been teaching this forever. You got to really pay attention to what the bad guys are doing. You know, if the guy's, he's stretching out and he's working his fingers and he's clenching his fists, these kinds of things, I tell him in really, really short terminology, that's going to be a fight. The guy's kind of, he's real submissive. He's kind of just looking around, that he's probably going to run on you. All these kinds of different things, he's what they call patterning. He keeps reaching for the same part of his body. He's got a weapon there someplace. He keeps checking it to make sure that it's still there. You see this kind of stuff going on all the time. So clearly, contact and cover is a huge thing with that. Making sure that even as a contact officer, you're still paying attention to all these little details, but your cover officer should be watching that even more. And you're talking about close quarters. I can't tell you how many times I see something getting ready to happen, and I'm not going to apologize for it in policy or out of policy. If I think something's about to happen, I see the guy making a move, he's going to get dumped. He's just going to get dumped. And this is where so many people don't believe, that I could transition to that kind of a violent type of person. But, when you're talking about guys that are out there to kill you, and they're taping razor blades to their licenses and all kinds of crazy shit like that. I mean, you hit a guy first hard and you put him on the ground, and then you realize, okay, now you'll know. I mean, pretty much, I don't think I've ever had a situation where I went hands-on first and was wrong, because those spidey senses go off, and I always went with my gut, no matter what that was. And if I was wrong, which fortunately, I could be wrong. There could be people out there going, yeah, I remember that one time, which is entirely possible. But from my memory, I don't remember ever going hands-on with anybody first and not finding something that was going to be deadly to me later. You know what I mean? So
that's like there's some agencies in Ohio that restrict officers from carrying a knife, right? And there's other agencies that restrict that as well too. But a lot of times a knife can be that difference maker, because a lot of times you can do more with a knife in protecting yourself and others, and especially in close quarters and things like that as well too. So,
well, I had that very, very conversation all this week. And in fact, so dedicated to John Hobbs, Phoenix PD officer, good buddy of mine from Mesa PD gave me this last year for either my birthday or for Christmas. I can't remember. And I tell my students all the time, I said, this is a tool. It's not a weapon. Okay. So when you got to testify in court that you pulled your tool out of your support side and you stabbed a guy in the neck because you couldn't get him off your gun, this is a tool I use to punch windows and to cut seatbelts. But in all reality, it's a weapon when we got to save our life. But when we describe what it is, we got to testify against it. That's what it is, you know, and it drives me crazy that guys don't realize that.
That's what this is here. You got to break the windows,
Yep.
got the seatbelt, and you got to, and especially like this serrated.
Nobody told me to bring my knife.
Yeah, you always got. That's the best self-defense in the world, you know, close quarters.
Absolutely.
No, Chris keeps buying me knives. I have like 2 in my purse right now.
I keep getting them too. I got a whole collection of them now. So
it's better than anything, you know, and especially because somebody's going to think twice about it, you know. I mean, and especially if they see their own blood, you know, you don't have to necessarily. And you know, a lot of times I can actually take it to where something that you know, if I'm drawn to use fatal force, but I'm able to utilize a knife and just kind of decapacitate them.
Yeah,
I mean, it's. You know, because that's what you're trying to. I'm not gonna say put them down. I mean, I know everybody keeps giving me lashback about using that phrase. Put them down. You treat them like dogs. You got to do what you got to do to save lives. But you know, it's you know, and I'm a firm believer in. I believe knife defense should be. I believe that should be in every tactical belt around the nation.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, there's a guy I've been watching a lot lately. His name's Trav from Fight Smart, and he's. From all the stuff that I've watched and all the different DT videos and all this kind of stuff, this guy he's awesome. He's the best, and the stuff he talks about makes a lot of sense. You know, he shows you these videos of these guys doing all this great shit, and he goes, "Okay, well, here's what it really looks like." And so I don't try to duplicate what he teaches because I'm just not at that level. I mean, I can teach some guys some really really basic stuff, but this guy he's like freaking lights out. But he keeps it really simple for guys like us that aren't knife fighters that can say, hey, do this and this and this. This is going to save your life. And the one thing he points out all the time, he goes, if you're going to be confronting somebody with a knife and you're in a situation where you got to close that distance, which I do definitely agree with, if you have to close the distance quick and be forceful, be prepared to get stuck or stabbed or sliced or whatever else. He goes, but like I say in several of my stories, I'm like, let that fuel you. Let that freaking be your rage to freaking take this guy out, whatever you need to do, you know, so.
Well, on top of that as well, too, in a defensive mode, you know, as long as when you're holding your knife, as long as you're holding it like this, and you rest it against your forearm, it becomes a defensive mechanism, you know, against anybody coming at you. To where, you know, if you're blocking, but you have the knife right here, and it's a great defense, you know, and it'll save your life 100. I'm not gonna say 100% of the time, but it's going to make a big difference, a very, very big difference.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
So we got to get it in. We got to add that to your training.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and there's a big debate from some of my Marine Corps buddies about if somebody, you know, tries grabbing your firearm, is that not deadly force? I say yes, absolutely.
It is.
I've had guys say no, because I said, well, you got the opportunity, you put me in jeopardy, and your intent is there, you know. So clearly, if you're grabbing onto my gun, I'm sure you're not going to just take it and run with it. You're going to try to use it against me. So as far as I'm concerned, hey, you know what, we're at that stage now where you've got all 3 elements going on there. It's time to get it on, you know. And however you can do that, if you can't do the drop and spin move on the guy to get him off you, you know, you got to resort to the next thing, whatever that is. So.
That's one of the main policies that I'm trying to, you know, have rewritten, because, you know, that's something that shouldn't vary by state, by municipality, by city, by state, by county. I don't care what it is. You know, imminent danger. You know, if somebody's grabbing for your, any time that's, you know, somebody's ready to take your life, which, you know, every person's going to have a different perception of that in the first place. You know, someone's perception of, you know, them running towards you, that's imminent danger. You know, I mean, I don't care what language anybody speaks. You know, if somebody means harm and they're instructed to stand down, and they beyond the words "stand down, do not move" is imminent danger to me.
Right.
Anybody that's combative after that point is imminent danger, not just to myself, but to any civilians that may be in the vicinity or anything else like that. And that's how imminent danger should be viewed. I know that it's I want to keep making it harder and harder and harder for officers to abide by that, but that's what's causing a lot of the different hesitation factors today. That's why we're seeing the rise in violence against law enforcement, and it's all because of this. And a lot of times that the civilians, when they go to the voting polls, the civilian sector doesn't realize like what that's actually taking away, and they think, they see certain things. We've discussed this before. They see education. They vote yes without knowing what that's actually going to be taking away,
right?
Or what the actual cost of it is.
Yeah.
So it's just it's ignorance.
A lot of people just have their heads buried in the sand. They don't really even understand what we do to protect them. You know what I mean? So
I didn't. When I started editing this book, I had no idea. I had a respect for the police, and I kind of had a, you go to the movies and you think that's what it is, but it's not anything like that. And you don't really realize the impact that all of that has on one individual, So I think that we don't know. And I think that's why, again, these conversations are important to bring that to light.
And, and especially in going over the whole reason why the title of Chapter 8 is Show 'em Your Gun. Because, a lot of times, and especially in today's culture, we don't have to take it to that level to where, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier in regards to the mediation aspect of everything. Sometimes we can just kind of get people back down to that level, the clear-headedness, or just being able to talk things through to where if the first thing that we do is pull sidearm and show them our gun, they're going to be defensive themselves as well too. Just if they were pointing a firearm at us. So a lot of times, making that cognizant decision to say, hey, you know what, I'll catch him. So, he's and then, like you said, his back was already to you. What's drawing your firearm going to do unless because we all know that if firearms drawn, our intent is to use if have to be, and it's you're not gonna be trying to shoot bicycle tires.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know I'm not that good of a shot anyway, so that would have never worked. And,
have you made it past 15 yards yet?
Not really, no. I'm not even gonna talk about that. So, I was at the range a couple weeks ago, and I was actually doing pretty good. I was pretty impressed with myself because it's not like it used to be where I was under pressure to make sure I qualled, which of course we all know is like the bottom of the barrel, super basic. All you gotta do is get through the AQ every year, or whatever it is. And for me, I trained a lot anyways, but I'll be the first to admit that when I got my rifle, my handgun skills just plummeted. They did, because I spent all my time with that rifle, and on some level really smart because that was my primary go-to. But at the same time, it was really stupid of me to not keep up my proficiency with the handgun, because even though my rifle never failed in all the tens of thousands of rounds I put through that thing, never had one jam ever, not one ever the entire time I had it, which is good. But you still need to keep up proficiency on that kind of stuff. And that thing was just so sexy. I'm like, I don't want to play with anything else except for the rifle. So I did, So to answer your question, no, I never did that well. Although when I'm not under pressure to qualify, I do a lot better. I can slow down, take my time, these kinds of things that you're supposed to do. But I'm just not that guy. I can't slow down. Natalie knows this. I'm one of those, freaking lights out, just put as many rounds down range as I can before I get killed, kind of a thing. So,
did you ever use the cat toy on the firearm?
Yeah, actually, I wrote about that. That was a rifle thing when I couldn't shoot, but I got in the range. And
that's what I meant. I know it was with the rifle. Did you ever use that on the sidearm?
Handgun? No, I never did. I probably could have. But I was just so attached to that freaking long gun. That was all I ever cared about at that point in time. So it probably wasn't smart for me to do that. But no. So, but go back to your point just a little bit about some of these restrictions that we have. I know a lot of agencies now are making you do what they call like a blue team or some whatever minor report every time you pull your firearm. Now, what is that telling our guys, our officers out there on the street? Well, if I pull my gun, then right there you're dead. If I pull my gun, no, you don't need to be thinking about what you're going to be doing after the fact. You need to be thinking about what's going on right now. Not, and I had a huge falling out with one of my bosses years ago, where I told him, I said, man, you're making me hesitate on the street. You're going to cost me my life. I said, let me do what I do, and I'll come back with the numbers that you need properly and safely. But if I start questioning all the shit that's going on, I'm already behind the curve as it is. I don't need to be any more behind the curve by questioning what I can and can't do if I'm either going to get in trouble or if I got to write paper. It's like, no, can't do that shit, man. So
100%. Then you gotta, and especially, then the report's going to be 2 extra pages explaining why you didn't do this. Explaining why superior number 1 said for me to think this through before I did this anymore.
Yeah, and next thing you know, you got a couple of officers knocking on your spouse's door going, well, he didn't pull his gun because he wanted to wrap paper, now he's dead. I'll opt for fucking plan A and go, if I got to take the guy out, hey, you know what, if I got to write paper, so be it. I don't really care, but one of those things I talked about in my presentation, I stole it, of course, from somebody else, is that, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die in a pile of brass on my feet, not cowered down behind a block wall someplace because I'm too scared to take care of business, or it's not because I'm fearful of taking care of myself, but I'm afraid of what's going to happen if I do something out of policy or my boss doesn't like me or whatever it is, These are the things we can't be worried about, I'm not in a critical incident anyways. So
You're
of course,
seeing a lot more of it though lately, a lot of hesitation. We just saw a video just the other day of a cop hesitating to pull his gun.
Yeah, and it's, and Chris and I even spoke about, the guy that was like, that told you, I know I'll never draw my firearm. It's like, well, why are you even joining the force? Because something like, I don't want somebody as a partner that's not going to, because if we're having a firefight and, he's sitting in the patrol car, where he could be backing me, you can't have, and that's why the shock value has to be driven in and driven in and driven in. It's, you don't want to scare people away, but in the same sense, you do. Because the ones that get scared away are going to be the ones that shouldn't be by your side in the first fucking place.
Right. Yeah,
I hate saying it like that, but that's the reality of it. Because, if somebody's going to sit there and say, well, I don't know if I could do this in this situation, kind of like what we spoke about, during the last broadcast, well, I love dogs. I don't think I could ever make a decision to, put one down. What if it's taking your life? And sometimes just that little hesitation where, once it has your throat, you're done.
Yeah.
Same thing with the subject. Once they, not all subjects are just going to lay down,
Yeah. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And you got to be ready for either side, whatever that happens to be. And that's why I was strike first kind of a guy, it's like, well, I'm not going to take a chance on getting my ass kicked because I know I don't have all these Superman skills and John Wick and all this great stuff that I got to just take care of business quickly and violently and efficiently as much as I can, so.
That guy has one hell of a body count, don't he, old John Wick?
It was Shakespeare who said discretion is the greater part of valor. And I think that's a greater part of this job too, is discretion.
Which is absolutely true. The unfortunate part is that, as you well know, my last boss took a lot of that away from me. And I struggled with that for a long, long, long time. And the truth of the matter was that there was a lack of respect in the middle, and then it turned into a personal war almost, where it's like, for whatever the reasons were, I don't know if it was because of what I did or because I didn't project enough strength back toward him or whatever. He took advantage of it, saw the blood in the water and attacked or whatever it was. But I got to the point where I kind of felt like I couldn't do anything. There was that bad decision bug. Everything I did was wrong. You know what I mean? And I was like, well, in a critical incident out on the street, this got to be the very last thing you're thinking about. You can't be thinking about all this other stuff. You got to think about, you're going home tonight to your loved ones, so I keep harping on the same thing over and over again, but this is very common with us right now, especially with the media and how people are beating us up. And, you know, that poor kid with that one video, I know he's probably getting all kinds of shit for that. He'll probably end up quitting, you know, because truth be told, I wasn't there. I don't know the circumstances before, during, and after kind of a thing, but he did not do what he was supposed to do. He should have taken that guy out, flat out, and he didn't. And I don't know why. And I'm not going to question why he did or didn't, but
I already know. I mean, it's, you know, and the scrutiny does, you know, play a large role. You know, a good, great friend of mine, you know, he was with the force for 12 years, and he had, of all his arrests, there was an 87% in over 11 years, 87% conviction rate of all subjects he apprehended were convicted. 87% in 11 years, you know, but through that 11 years, it was that same thing. His superiors were always like, "Oh, you should have handled this differently. You should have handled this differently," and that's why, you know, ultimately he retired early, was because he just couldn't take the, you know, the lash back on, you know, you let me do my fucking job. You know, I mean, I earned my shield. I earned, you know, it's the let me do my job. You know, and ultimately, you know, he retired early and everything else. It wasn't nothing because, you know, kind of like we were talking about earlier about the, you know, the guy saying the dog get hit by a car. You know, sometimes it's just that mental compression of, you know, the superiors, and especially now, today, when it's just, you know, test taking abilities, and they haven't been out there doing it, but they're going to tell you how to do it. And it's like, you know, they haven't even seen the streets, you know?
Yeah.
It's anyway.
I love that. I mean, I've got so many of my bosses, you know, that were telling me how I'm supposed to conduct myself. You know, I'm like, look, you know, I'm not you. I don't do it that way, you know, and whatever else. And not that I had any lack of respect for them, but, you know, you do it your way, let me do it my way, kind of a thing. And, you know, the thing is, I mean, again, a lot of stuff I'm talking about here is from my side of the fence. I'm retired and I've already done all my shit. I'm not facing any of the badness anymore. But I always kind of felt like I had a way out, some kind of an option where I could just take time off, or I could change, go someplace else, or whatever else it is. And if you have that option, when you realize that things are just not going the way you want, just transfer to someplace else if you can, or take some time off if you can. If you can't do that, you know, start doing some major, serious soul searching. And I may have touched on this the last time, I can't remember, but my buddy that says that he won't ever pull his gun again, you know, I told him, I said, hey, man, you know what? Do yourself a favor, do me a favor, because, you know, I love you. Go back and read your oath of office and remember why you got into this job to begin with. And, you know, if that doesn't spark something with you, you should probably start looking for something else, you know. And that's you know, that's a little freaking left field. I get it. You know, it's like, yeah, well, again, you're not here. You don't know what I'm going through, kind of shit. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But guess what? If you put on that badge and gun and a vest, you're going through shit. And not one person out there has not been in your shoes. Okay, so it's nothing new. We've all been through it before. Not to downplay by any stretch of the imagination, but if you want to get well, go get well. If you don't, if you want to sit on the sidelines and just, you know, be a victim, okay, then that's where you're gonna stay. You need to either, you know, fight for yourself or move on to something else. My opinion. So,
no, I mean, that's 100%. You know, and especially with the oath of office. You know, it's the same thing with the boxes being checked on, you know, the applications on the initial intake and everything else, to where, yeah, you know, I will make this decision. I'll make this decision. You know, psyche value and everything. You know, some just go with it and say the things. They don't take it as a true oath. You know, a lot of people are just taking the steps to get through because they know it's a requirement for me to be able to go out there and do what I want to go try to do, or do what because the perception I have of what this job is going to provide me. You know, so, you know, a lot of individuals really don't even know the oath. You know, ask some veterans what their oath is. You know, it's going to be like,
right, exactly. And I'm very much of the opinion, you know, and this is why I think Natalie loves the book so much, is that if you're not doing it from the heart, if you're doing this because you want the money or you want the accolades or whatever else, you're in the wrong business. If you do it from the heart, all that shit's going to work out. In my opinion, again, you know, that's what, you know, from the second I made the decision to go into the law enforcement community as a first generation, I knew it was just going to be the greatest thing in the world. And despite all the tragedies and all the traumas and all the bad shit, I was 100% right, you know. And now, having survived all the shit that I survived, not only professionally but personally, now I can have these kinds of conversations. And I'm still right. I still believe that everything that I went through was for an absolute purpose to, make myself stronger and better and whatever else. And now to help, I mean, just like that 0.01%, if I hope just one dude, I've lived all that stuff for a reason. You know what I mean? So, but
that's the most important aspect as well too. It's one of my favorite movies is Good Will Hunting, Robin Williams and Matt Damon. And when they're sitting around that pond, and Robin Williams tells him, he says, I'm not gonna know anything unless I know you. That I can't read no fucking book, Mark Twain or something like that. But it's without that real life experience, going back to the test taking for the superiors and things like that. But it's that real life to where, unless somebody can be real with themselves as far as, why they're joining any first responder career, of what that is for, and really upholding and, remembering the oath to themselves, let alone oath to office, it'll carry them a long way. And it's vital, man. I mean, it's what you've been through, having that experience. That's why this, it's a read along, ride along, because I'm telling you that the sequencing and everything else, it's genius, because it didn't just go right when you're in the career and things like that. It's hey, this is my decisions of why I'm going in. This is what it was like in the beginning, and especially, how we touched, on the past broadcasts, in regard to, how attentive you were to what others were saying around you about the rookie, and, how they just kind of like, new guy and all this stuff. It's just, it plays a large mind fuck on somebody, because it's not something that they perceived, and others need to be aware that happens. And, the vulnerabilities being exposed as well enhances, someone else being able to expose their own vulnerabilities. And especially when it's so hard when you have administration superiors of ours, lashing at us about decisions we made on a subject we just apprehended, and I did that wrong. And I know that I did it by the book, but now I'm supposed to come to you if I feel that I can't handle, the last call that I just took. So I restrict and I bottle that in. I go home. I don't tell my wife or anybody else about it. I'm just this, laid back beach guy. Everything's just fine. But it's knowing somebody else is there is like always going to be the strongest to do that. Because it's so many people carry so many weights, and, without saying, hey, I've done this. And like you said, you're going to have, the hard heads in there that, oh yeah, right, man, that shit doesn't really happen. And it's okay. Yeah, right.
That's what I loved about this
you'll
book.
be in control of your life.
I know, that's what I loved about this book, was that the honesty. He was so honest about, just certain parts that most I think would not say. Just even the chapter where he dropped his gun, and he was, he has a good sense of humor. He has a good sense of humor about, himself. He's able to laugh at himself. He's able to be honest about the job and himself, in the uniform. And I think that's what I loved most, is just the honesty of it. And it it resonated with me, but not because I was ever in law enforcement, but it just resonated me as a person. It was just really well done.
And that's, I'm glad you just said that, because realistically, the training for the fight can never be done without understanding and admitting our own fallibilities.
Mm-hmm.
We all have our faults, we all make mistakes, but it's in recognizing those mistakes. And like, Chris says it time and time again, to where, he's lived the mistakes, he's admitted the mistakes. He may joke about it, things like that, but it's so that you don't have to make this mistake.
I think that's the smartest thing you can do, is own up to your mistakes right away and just move on. I think to just, a lot of the high court of public opinion has, act as if they've never made mistakes in their lives and their jobs or whatever, but they're so eager to point fingers at police officers. But we're all human. We all make mistakes. And I think the easiest, fastest way to get over them is just to own up to them. And by Chris writing this book, to me, was so brave. I asked him the other day, because I'm getting ready to put my book out, and I'm so nervous about, it's like wearing your heart on your sleeve. You're putting yourself out there. And he never showed any nerves. He was very steadfast in getting this book out there, and very brave. And I think that says a lot about him. You know, as an officer, a retired officer, as a human being, he's just really, his heart is in giving back and doing good for the law enforcement community. So I think that's brave, to be able to do that in such a public way.
I don't think that was it. I mean, and just for the record, you know, I'm a sure thing, so don't worry about it. So anyway, no, but I mean, because I mean, it sounds bad, and I've been told not to do this anymore, and I try not to downplay my abilities and whatever else. But for a kid of my background, to be able to, you know, just to be able to achieve that goal of getting hired on, it was a pretty big deal for me. Because I see a lot of these other guys, and I wrote about it early on in the book, talking about these guys that are veterans and these kind of people that they've really deserved that spot, where I kind of felt like I was, you know, I kind of snuck in the back door and just got lucky and took it full blown. I mean, I took full advantage of that whole thing throughout my entire career. Slowed down once in like 2010 for a couple of months when I started losing the heart for it. But then when I figured out my passion, I got back into it. I never slowed down again until I was forced into slowing down. So I think having that opportunity that so many guys, and I know I mean, I've got so many of my friends that aren't able to join the force for whatever their reasons are. Background doesn't come through, or they give up, or they've got a medical reason or whatever else. So every single day I'm out there wearing that badge, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm actually able to do this job. And, you know, of course, get paid for it. That didn't hurt either. But just to have that pride and walking around going, yep, you know, look at me kind of a thing. And that was huge for me. I mean, everything else that kind of came with it was you know, it was definitely worthwhile and purposeful. But for me, it was just like, wow, I can't believe I'm actually able to do. You guys hired me. Shit. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, well, I mean, on top of that, though, too, I mean, your decision, just like so many other officers, though, solidifies, you know, why you joined in the first place. You know, that true calling. You know, when you see officers that retire, officers that step out, but yet they still continue to give back, that's when you can really see that, you know, that's why, you know, I don't want to start getting into fate and everything else too, but, you know, that's why you deserved, you know, that chance out of those other guys.
It wasn't luck. This guy has over 700 commendations. He has a couple of medals. I mean, it's just something that you're called to do. That's not something everybody is called to do. So it had nothing to do with luck.
I don't know. Maybe could have been timing, you know, right time, right place, you know, kind of like you and I. So.
The chief needed his carpet done.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it does. Yeah. Yeah. So who knows? I mean, and you gotta soul search. I mean, I knew my reasons why, you know, I wanted to go into the thing, but I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I really, really didn't. I swear I thought it was just gonna be chasing bad guys and kicking in doors and all this fun shit. You know, I had no idea the realities of it. You know, and the big joke now, of course, is that, you know, I can never write a police report in 20 years, but I can write a book. You know, I never thought about having to write reports. I'm like, who does that shit? It's like Lethal Weapon, man. You freaking get into a shooting, you go back the next day, you know, you drink beer with your buddies, and then you go back into service, right? I mean,
I don't have a secretary that writes reports.
What is that, right? So, but you know what I love about the entire idea of being an officer in the law enforcement community, of course, was that it was unbelievably so well-rounded. I mean, so many different aspects of life in general, and not talking about just the training part. I mean, you do learn how to drive fast, and you learn how to type and talk to people, and just be aware of your surroundings and all these kinds of things. But it was even deeper than that, where, you know, you just learn how to live. You know what I mean? You learn what real life looks like. And for me, that was huge. I mean, that was really huge. So
it's the watch what they do and do the opposite.
yeah. So mostly, yeah. So
and, you know, I mean, how much? I'm not gonna say more. Did you grow to, like, you know, love what you did through the course of time? You know, because I mean, I know that what you signed up for, but you know, how long did it take before it was just like you just said, you know, actually seeing how much life it exposes you to? Were you able to grasp that?
Oh man, I would say I'm gonna say probably that first knockdown drag out pursuit slash fight that I got into when I realized that. I mean, because that thing, there were so many moving parts on that whole situation where, you know, we are putting the public in danger. That's a huge part of it. And then what bad guys are willing to do to get away was a huge part of it. And when I get on the radio and I'm screaming for help, the support that I got from 3 different agencies in 3 different cities, um, that was a huge part of it. And then um, I talk about mental, physical, and emotional preparedness. But you know, one thing I didn't touch on that much, but just a little bit, was that willingness too, especially the physical willingness, to where I've got to be willing to freaking put myself out there and fight this guy until he's subdued, really, and that was huge as well. And then you get done, and then you realize that shit, now we got to clean this mess up. You know, and that took 2 days to clean this whole disaster up, and you know, I'm getting calls. That was my very first time I got a letter of commendation from a chief, and it was actually Ohio, as a matter of fact. Speaking of, he wrote me a letter of commendation going, I don't know how you guys found this dude. We've been looking for him for like 2 years. You took him out and the whole thing. It was great, you know, and thanked us for the whole thing. And I was like, wow. So, you know, I mean, getting those kinds of accolades, even though we never got into it for that, was actually really nice as well. It's like, wow, I just did my job. I got paid for it, and I came out unscathed, and now I'm getting recognized for it, which was like, what the hell happened, you know? So, but
Awesome.
so it didn't take me very long to get to that point where I realized that, you know, this is real life. And of course, the first time somebody tried to truly kill me, you know, then I realized that, you know, I mean, it was like that. I mean, just like that, how quickly I could have just not been here anymore. I think that's when I started to have a little bit more appreciation for life, not getting too sappy on that whole topic, but
He's a big sap.
I am. I'm a sucker too, but
He's a very big sap.
but you know, then you go to your first funeral, and then you realize that, you know, wow, this stuff actually does happen out here. And then you go to your 17th whatever funeral, or 16th or whatever it is, and then you see an officer get killed pretty much in front of you. That changes your entire outlook on life across the board. I mean, totally across the board.
I can't even imagine that. I mean, that's I can't even pretend to imagine that. You know, but you know, one of the things though too is that, you know, they tell us not to personalize anything when we're out there, but you know, then when you attend a funeral, I mean, you can't help but pay attention to the family of the fallen brother or sister.
Right.
And it's just then you start to personalize that you know, hey, if that's me, and I mean, we start affecting of like, oh, hey, how's my family going to accept the fact that, you know, that's me laying in that, you know. But anyway, it's
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, man. That was the second part of, you know, my coming to life realization, I guess, was Mark Atkinson's funeral, because I never really thought about it. I never really got emotional about much at that point in time. Never really had any reason to, except for my academy thing where I almost got fired. But that's, you know, whatever. But when they played his favorite song over the PA, dude, I mean, for the first time ever, out of nowhere, I just started fucking bawling. I'm like, what just happened here? I don't think we've read that story yet. But when that happened, that's when I realized, I'm like, wow, I'm part of something huge. I mean, really freaking huge. You know, there were so many people in that church. They were literally, I mean, some of the really bigger churches are sort of clearly huge, but this one was kind of small. And there were people for blocks, you know, that couldn't even come close to getting inside that thing. And I just felt like, wow, I'm honored to actually be sitting inside one of the pews inside the thing here, you know, because so many people wanted to be there and couldn't, you know. So,
Chris took me to the scene where David Glasser was killed a couple of times, and that feeling to me was palpable. I mean, I had no idea what it felt like to be there at the gunfight, but just being on that scene and standing on that, what Chris calls sacred ground, was just, it was palpable. It was crazy. The second time we went there, it was really weird. It was a really windy day, and we were standing right above the pavement where Dave fell. And there were rose petals that had blown off of a bush and were just sitting still on that spot. And it was a really windy day, right? They weren't moving. Yeah.
You know,
it was surreal. So.
Well, and that goes into like with this chapter as well too, about the, you know, being aware of your surroundings and things like that too. You know, because, you know, on that day, you know, as you explain time over and again, Chris, about how that's just a cookie cutter neighborhood. I'm sure, like, Natalie, now that you've actually, you know, gone back to that scene, you can see how, you know, like, wow. 'Cause I'm sure you were kind of like thrown back, like something like that happened in this kind of like neighborhood where it's you just never know.
No.
Yeah, when I went back there for the first time, you know, I remember leaving there the day of, and it was huge, just this huge, massive scene. And I went back there the first time a week or so later. It was tiny. I mean, it looked nothing like I remembered.
It's like
clearly I remembered where it was.
Road, skinny street.
Yeah, and not at all what I thought it was. You know, and now we go back there. I just, you know, I say some prayers and stuff like that, and just kind of remember these kinds of things. And I don't go back there anymore to investigate, because that's what I did for the first probably half a dozen times I went there, just to try to put it back together in my mind. I don't do it that way anymore now. It's just to kind of go there and just be, you know, kind of more of a memorial, if anything else, you know. And I did write a long chapter about that. It was all about going back to the scene and how it affects you. And, you know, if you're forced to go back to a scene before you've cleared it out of your mind, these kinds of things, and how you should do it, you know, everything based on just how I dealt with it, you know. My first real shooting back in 2000, I went back to that scene and found a basically a piece of wood cut out of a heart, or a heart cut a piece of wood, and hung it on the wall. And just went back there and just kind of remembered, you know, it wasn't because I took a life, it's because I survived, you know, and that was huge for me. And I think stayed up there for like 10 years before I think it finally either broke or something happened to it. But I put it like 10 feet up on the wall on purpose. I had like a really big ladder so nobody could go up there and just grab it, you know. And actually, the lady actually owned the store. It was her car that the bad guy was in. So we actually both wrote a little freaking thing on the front of it. I signed it with my serial number and whatever else, and then she signed it with her name and wrote a little prayer.
I told you he was sappy.
Yeah, and these are those weird things that you don't ever think that you're ever gonna do. You're like, okay, you know, all right. So, but yeah, I mean,
there's a mark.
Yeah, you gotta go back, and somehow for me, you got to make that mark, you know, whatever it is. So, in fact, so for me, because I'm a big 144-1 King David Psalm, Nat actually got that exact same psalm for the back of my handgun. So now that psalm is right there where I can see it whenever I'm shooting my gun. I got to figure out where I'm going to put this patch. I don't know where I'm going to put this patch yet. So, but
holster.
Did I ever explain that to you? What that means?
Put it on a hold. No. You asking me?
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
The 144-1.
No.
Okay. Well, I think we got time if you want to hear the story really quick.
Of course.
I don't tell it nearly as good as my neighbor downstairs does. He came up one time and was asking me some questions about whatever, help me move a couch or what have you. And I don't know if you guys can see it. Let me see if I can. So that's my poster from Dave Grossman that I got back in 2017 up in Colorado. On the bottom, very, very bottom right-hand corner, Dave writes the Psalm 144-1 on the poster. I'm like, okay, cool. I never really thought much about it. My neighbor downstairs, who's a Bible encyclopedia, this guy's read, as far as I know, he's read like 9, like front to back, and he knows everything there is to know. Super cool. So he comes upstairs and he goes, hey, did you recognize the correlation between the King David Psalm and David Glasser? And I'm like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. So he goes on to tell me, he goes, well, so you understand the King David Psalm? I'll read it for you guys. For the ones that don't know, I got to put my cool glasses on. Actually, I guess I can see it. So blessed be God, my rock, who trains my hands for battle, my fingers for war. King David. So he says, you know how long it took to make the heavens and the earth? I said, yeah, 7 days. He goes, okay, so you got 144-1. He goes, so 7 + 1 is 8, of course. And what's Dave Glasser's serial number? 8144. And dude, I heard that and I just fucking lost it. I started bawling. I'm like, oh my God, this whole time, I never put it together. And does it really mean a whole lot? Not really in real world terms. But when you go through a critical incident like that, when you start recognizing these spiritual,
and he sided himself with that. That's
it's
that's intense. That's really intense.
Every time I tell that story, I get chills. I'm like, oh my God, it's just unbelievable. So, and if you knew Dave, Dave was super spiritual that way. He was absolutely ready to give up his life. And how do you get to that point? I still don't really understand it, And then when you hear those kinds of stories, you can't deny it, even if you wanted to. It's like, okay, you may or may not believe it, but you can't deny it. I mean, there's just no way. So,
thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories that I just learned. That was right when I moved in here, San Diego, a couple of years ago, and now I try to relay that whenever I can for folks that kind of get it. I don't get super spiritual people because it gets people uncomfortable, but that's one of those ones. That's just my favorite thing. And I'm like, oh my God! I called Dave's mom. I'm like, you're never gonna believe this,
You're one of them Bible thumpers.
Yeah, which I never had. Then my mom, she's kind of that way, and she's tried to force that on me and stuff. And I'm like, no, but.
It's one of the things at times, though, I mean, it's the whole seed aspect of it, too. And, like, when we actually have those moments in life where we can sit back and look at things of how things really came together and how the pieces of life itself is like pieces together. And you start seeing the transition of everything, the things that have been right there in front of you the whole time. And you just never really paid attention to that one thing. Kind of going back to the whole Die Hard movie. I've watched it, 100 times over, and it's just like never paid attention. Like, it's such a small spot. It's like, yeah, it was right there. That was my calling.
Yeah.
So,
and that's what I've learned. Nat and I talk about this pretty much every day about stuff that, it's all there, and you may or may not know it. But if you see something small and then you recognize it and you pay attention to it, maybe even take it to like what I'm doing with this one, not to the point of exploiting it, but definitely educating people and letting them know, hey, these are the things that are all around us all the time. So I'm going to let her tell the story about her mom on the beach the night we walked back from our favorite pizza joint. So one of the greatest stories ever, too. I mean, it's very along the lines of Dave. So
I lost my mother 5 years ago to cancer, and she and I started the Love Note movement. And so Chris and I were coming back. We were walking down the beach from our favorite pizza joint. It was a couple-mile walk. And we were on the beach. It was dark. The moon was out. Stars were out. It was just beautiful. But we were walking hand in hand, didn't say 2 words to each other. We were just enjoying the moment. And I just got to thinking, I really had wished that my mother had left me another note, one last note before she left. I really thought when I cleaned out her bedroom that I would find one tucked away in a jewelry box or under her pillow or something. Never found a note. So I just mentioned it to him. I said, I really wish my mom had left me one last love note. And we were walking, and I kind of started feeling a little emotional. So I kind of walked away towards the water, and he continued walking along the shore. And not 50 yards later, he says, Nat, come here. And he gets out his flashlight, because he carries his flashlight with his knife. And he's shining it down at his feet. And I walk up, and in the sand is written the word hope is written, and a heart with outlined in rocks, and the peace sign outlined in rocks. Well, my mother's name was Hope. So literally, 3 minutes after I said that out loud, that I'd wish my mother had left me a note, I really just wanted that. And then there it was, her name in the sand. So I just literally started crying. And so I believe in the signs. I believe if you are aware and open to them, you'll see them.
I do too. I do as well. I believe in speaking things into existence as well too.
Yes,
You speak positive things and things, and you make things happen with words. And it's things. I don't want to start because I could go on for days about the things with faith and things like that. Though I mean, it's the.
That's a lot about what my book is about. Is just having faith and looking for the positive things in your life. And you can't help but believe that you find them when you're looking for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that, and here's an example just to kind of put it in perspective that everybody can relate to. So, when Jesus said that, you say to this mountain, move here, that mountain will move, as long as you have the faith of a mustard seed. Okay.
I have that
Every
book.
yeah, well, everybody listening, watching, or whatever the case may be, today or in the future, if I want you to think about this and relate this to faith. And this shows you how little faith today's society, us as people, have today. If you told a bottle or anything that's in front of you, if you just said in your mind, I know that this thing's going to move. As soon as that thing moved a millimeter, your mind all of a sudden like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. Which shows what? No faith.
Right.
True faith would have meant that you knew it was going to move and it goes from here to there. But us in our minds and how, I'm not going to say simple-minded, but, we only use, a portion of our, like 10% of our brain anyway. But, if we really did that, and that's what I'm talking about speaking things into existence. If you know, hey, this is going to happen. This is what I want to have. This is, it's going to be there.
You ask for it and you believe for it. That's just how I sort of live my life. And a lot of what you just said is what I've written in my book, because I feel like having gone through what I did with my mother and remained faithful, which was not always easy. It was hard. There were really hard days. And to see my life now, how far I've come. I met this great guy, I helped him with this amazing book, and I'm sitting here with you guys today. And, I have this crazy network of people, a community around me, only because I had faith, just this, I swear, just the size of a mustard seed. It was not a lot. It's just a little bit, just enough to get me here.
It was well worth it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, looking back, it was so hard, but I don't know how I would have survived or without that sense of faith and that mentality. I don't know where I'd be.
People always question, how could a good God allow all this evil? How could you measure how could you measure love without hate? How could you measure good without evil? You have to have a contrast. You can't have light without the darkness to shine the light. You can't have one without the other. They go hand in hand. Love and hate.
That's one of the things, especially right now with, the pandemic, and you see all this fear and people are just so afraid. But, we have there's a lot going on in the world, but I'm not seeing a lot of faith right now. Not on the media anyway, but people are angry. They're throwing fits and having tantrums because you're not wearing a mask, you're vaccinated, you're not vaccinated. I'm not seeing a sense of faith in people, and
it's actually a strategy of war. So, years and years and years ago, Robert Greene wrote 48 Laws of Power, and he also wrote a book. He was mostly known for 48 Laws of Power, but one of the greatest books I've ever read was 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. And that's a strategy of war where you invoke fear because it's easy to control someone that's scared. You know what I mean? You can divert them this way, that way, and others. And, people aren't thinking for themselves. They're putting their faiths into wrongful, decision makers and things. It's just, I don't want to start going into all this, again, because I have so many different things about that as well, too. But it's I don't look at things, I look at things for what they are, not what they're said to be or anything. That's like this whole broadcast that I do, truth, the reality of the headline. Anybody can preach that they're about one thing, but what's really going on? And that's why I love that, Chris is my most featured guest here. I'm going through this right here because it is the reality of it all. It's people just get so fog-minded and they put people against one another that they lose faith and it's the more you lose a lot of times, and that's why they always say that, it actually tests your faith to where take this away, take this. Well, could you imagine losing the closest thing you have to you? Would you still believe then? Oh, yes, I would. Look at Job. Job's actually the oldest book in the Bible, and it's for a very good reason. That, he was tested, everything up to his life, but what is his life? Was it all the containments of that? the people around him, his farm, his home, and everything else? Or is his life, him cherishing himself? So, but anything, I can go on forever.
Yeah. I love that. It's easier said than done. I mean, we all have been through our struggles, and how you come out the other side is going to be dependent on, a lot of your attitude, what you believe. And again, my big push these days is if you want to be okay, you'll be okay. If you don't, then go ahead and sit on the sidelines. The rest of us are going to stay in the fight and get in the game and live. That's what I spent over 2 decades surviving, not living, and that was because of a failed relationship, it just sucked. So my living was pretty much on the street doing cop shit, but my surviving was being at home with somebody that I didn't really get along with very well. I was like, okay, well, look at me now. Holy cow, who knew? So,
well, it's the same thing with like the St. Michael. Almost every law enforcement agency across the nation, it's thrown at them about the guardian St. Michael, but it's like nobody looks at it as a faith thing or like, but later on when it actually starts hitting home, it starts, oh, hey, it starts making sense. And, it will too. You have the blind people that, have stupid things to say, but those are the people I love talking to, though.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what do you guys think, man? It's getting close to my bedtime at 8:00 here, on the West Coast. So.
I'm at 11:30, man.
11:30.
I'm at 10:30. I'm at 10:30. Well, I'll be up for another couple hours. Yeah. Then I'll be back up at 3 a.m.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure her and I are gonna sit and chat about this conversation for a little while before.
That's why I look like death. Now that she's got your book done, now that she has her book done, now she's gotta help me get mine out there.
Yes.
Real, dude.
Definitely.
I was looking to release it January of last year. Because I've had it's scrambled.
It's hard. No, it's hard to do. It's really takes a lot of patience and time, and you want to get it out right. There were
sometimes I get long-winded though. I get talk about one thing and I can say it 15 times over just to try to beat it in somebody's head. Like, look, this is what you're supposed to do.
Trust me. Okay. Nobody's more long-winded than Chris. Our first meeting was 5 hours. Okay.
Right.
Children's restaurant.
See that? See that right there? That's where you're sleeping tonight. So.
I can't lock the door. We don't have a lock.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, and especially with a man that's kicked so many doors open, I don't know if that would be beneficial in the first place.
Hear me.
I don't know. Tell him about the karate story the other day. So. I was teaching her how to do the karate control technique the other day, and
because I was telling him I can't see you in action. Like you're just kind of a nerd and funny and fun to hang around with, but he put some clothes on me, and then I end up on the kitchen floor. I'm like, okay, I get it.
It was funny. What's funny about that is you ever seen the little the nightstick on the keychain? A lot of people don't know what that's used for, but you're supposed to hit the wrist bone right here. Or like if somebody's resisting, you hit the wrist bone. Like if you're trying to put, you're trying to cuff them or anything else like that. Well, I was showing a buddy of mine. He's like, you got this stupid ass little nightstick on your thing. Ding. I mean, you get that wrist bone right here. It's
what's that thing where you grab my hand like that?
Yeah, double 90. So don't give her any tips, man. I'm trying to defend myself as it is. Jesus.
Pressure points. Well, you armed her with 2 knives.
Yeah, I think I know, right? And I gave her one of my guns already too. So, oh boy. So
you guys will have some fun tonight.
Yeah, I'll be sleeping on the couch, like this, looking around.
Awesome.
Yeah, anyway.
It's always a blessing, man. And
yeah,
let me know when we can do it again. I got one tomorrow.
I'm gonna shoot for Wednesdays because that's my sort of my half day almost. But if we could do like a Saturday Eve kind of a thing as well, maybe 2 nights a week now.
I'm 24/7, 365.
We've been doing this shit for a while. We're on chapter 8, man. We need to get rolling.
Yeah, we'll do it straight just to read through. But I mean, it's I love talking about it though as well too, because a lot of times it's the things on this. But now that I've actually freed up, because I've been like doing some my other businesses and stuff like that too. It's like now that I have a lot more free time, I can actually start doing a lot of the different productions and stuff like that and getting it out there on more wavelengths than what it has been. So,
And I think this is the year you're going to publish your book.
oh, it's definitely going to happen this year. I'll be flying out to California February.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I'll be in the I'll be in the neighborhood.
All right.
We know a great taco place.
Awesome.
Oh, the best in the world. So
we'll go. I'll take you to a better taco place over in Mesa, Arizona.
Okay. Maybe.
You guys have a blessed night. It was a pleasure speaking to you. I'll speak to you guys again here soon.
Cool. Sounds good, man.
Stay safe and stay blessed in all things. Good night.
Right on. Thanks, bud.
Yes, sir. Always.